for Flynn. The question is that this bill be now read a second time. I call the member for Moreton.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I rise to speak on the Appropriation Bills 1, 2, 5 and 6, 2014-15 and the Parliamentary Departments No. 1, 2014-15. These bills are a part of the Abbott-Hockey budget that will go down in Australian history as the most un-Australian budget ever. These bills signify a step away from the Australia I hope to see, that I love and that I want my children and grandchildren to inherit. The Australia that I want, the Australia that I serve, believes in giving people a fair go. This budget does none of that. The Australia I serve gives our pensioners a fair income to live comfortably in their retirement after spending a lifetime contributing to our nation. So I'm not sure where the Deputy Prime Minister finds the pensioners that he speaks to, where he said that they're blowing their funds on cruises and luxury items. They're not the people that I talk to, or Anne from Sunnybank that I spoke to earlier tonight, who spent 12 years in aged care speaking to pensioners. They're not off going on cruises. The people that I delivered meals to when I spent a day with Meals on Wheels a few weeks back, the life that I saw was not one of luxury and of luxury items and throwing money away. And also those Australians on disability pensions and their carers. They should be supported, not punished by a budget that delivers harsh cuts and gives tax breaks to those at the top of the distribution, or effectively tax breaks. I believe in a prosperous Australia and that I'll stand up for the people in my electorate who know that this nation will not prosper by us cutting pensions, by us cutting healthcare and introducing these taxes such as the the fuel tax and also the GP tax. I believe in an Australia where your destiny is not predetermined by your parents' wealth or your postcode. I believe in a fair and prosperous nation populated by a creative and productive people. But this is not the Australia we saw reflected in the budget a fortnight ago, a budget that targets our seniors and also targets school kids. Irina Bokova, the Director-General of the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organisation, or UNESCO, said, and I quote, "From better health to increased wealth, education is the catalyst of a better future for millions of children, youth and adults. No country has ever climbed the socio-economic development ladder without steady investments in education." International research has indicated that early childhood education is crucial to promoting the educational and social development of disadvantaged children. In addition, measures to boost academic engagement and achievement, such as more hands-on learning and a positive school climate and mixed ability grouping, also emerge as key factors in retaining young people within full-time education. This is where we should be investing, not cutting. In December 2011, the Labor government commissioned the most comprehensive review of our school education system in more than 40 years, the Gonski report. And I remind those opposite that this was economic analysis of education by a committee, an expert committee led by a banker. It wasn't a bleeding heart lefties plan for the future. It was an economic imperative that he outlined in his committee in the Gonski education report, where they indicated that there's been a performance decline in the last 10 years and a growing gap between the highest and lowest performing students, up to two or so years emerging by the time kids are 13 and 14. The Gonski report showed that to strengthen Australia's future, the government must provide additional investment to schools with greater concentration on disadvantaged students, which is needs-based funding, not massive cuts to education as outlined in the budget papers. Labor invested $14.7 billion in additional investment in Australian schools because we know that education is fundamental to ensuring young people are equipped in the best possible way to take the path towards their passions and interests. I want to see educational inequality addressed in this nation by assisting disadvantaged schools, whether in Moreton or anywhere in this land, whether in remote areas or lower socioeconomic circumstances, irrespective of the sign above the school gate. We don't need schools that are hampered by a lack of resources for our teachers or by a lack of access to technology, which inhibits learning in the digital world that we are embracing. In my electorate of Moreton, there are about 21,000 students attending 45 or so schools. Moreton is a home to a large range of fantastic schools, and I want to see these students given the best opportunities in life through education, and we won't achieve that by cutting the education budget. When voters went to the polls, they were told by the Liberal and National Party that that they would not cut education. It was supposed to be a joint ticket. Instead, teachers, parents and students were betrayed with the biggest cut to school funding that this country has ever seen. And higher education wasn't fair. Education is obviously fundamentally valuable because it allows children to develop, but these cuts to the university and TAFE will restrict so many people that aren't well off. Labor has a strong track record that we can be very proud of when it comes to investing in our children's future at schools, early childhood and at universities. After all, we are the party of Gott Whitlam, the political party that gave every smart Australian the opportunity to attend university, and we're committed to ensuring that higher education remains accessible and affordable for all Australians, all clever Australians. This dumb but rich strategy that seems to be being advanced by those opposite, the member for Sturt leading the charge, this is a guy who, when he went to university, according to the internet, funded the Days of Our Lives Club at university and saw that as a significant achievement. I'm hoping that was a joke addition to the internet, but I'm looking forward to him correcting the record. When Gough Whitlam historically abolished university fees so that tertiary education could be more accessible for working class people like myself, Australia took a significant step towards bettering itself through investing in education. This current government is about to make another historic decision for Australia, a decision that reverses this accessible tertiary education and makes it harder for our children and grandchildren to attend university. On the radio today, they talked about as much of a 33% increase on the cost of degrees, maybe more at the sandstone universities and some of the red brick universities. I fear that Australia's youth will pay the price for the budget decisions of a fortnight ago. By cutting funds to tertiary education and deregulating university fees, we will return to a time when only the rich can afford to send their kids to university, which creates further inequality and unfairness across our great nation and misses the opportunities to harvest the great brains of those that are in poorer circumstances. The future of our nation will be built on quality education, not by cutting. It'll be built by focusing on skills and innovation, not by slashing these university fees, university budgets, especially if we are to strategically prepare for the Asian century where we'll be competing against these emerging nations on our doorstep. This is a budget built on the wrong choices and the wrong priorities. Very short-sighted, short-term saving, but when you combine it with this policy, the Liberal and National Party's fraud ban policy, where they gutted the NBN, which was going to see innovation and the new jobs of the digital revolution be rolled out, and especially when it comes to services like services and education being delivered to Asia. The government made a promise to the Australian people, the LNP before the election made a promise to the Australian people that there would be no changes to higher education, and they broke that promise. It is the end, basically, of affordable higher education, and we will oppose the Abbott government's inequitable changes to higher education and fight to maintain the current assistance programs, widely acknowledged and respected as being fair throughout the world. I believe in a fair go. That's why I'm a member of the Australian Labor Party. We are a party that believes in opportunity for all, academic freedom and autonomy, research that advances knowledge and critical thinking and obviously productivity, and delivers access to university based on merit, not just the ability to pay. And that investment in education will yield, or has yielded, significant economic and social benefits for our community. In the modern competitive climate, it is important that the long-term importance of such investment in education is not forgotten. When discussing investment in our future through education, this goes hand in hand with effectively moving Australia towards clean energy and a sustainable environment and sustainable economy. Climate change poses a serious threat, both economic and social, and perhaps even militarily, that will severely impact on the world's most vulnerable, the young people and future generation. Inaction proves that we are willing to pass on our issues to the next generation when it comes to environmental damages, and that is a short-term selfishness that no parent can be a part of. The Labor Party committed to addressing the big issues in climate change and pollution reduction. Those opposite supported that. I remember the 2007 and 10 campaigns. The first act after coming to government in 2007 by the Labor government was to ratify the Kyoto Protocol, and we then committed to putting a cap on pollution through an emissions trading scheme, one supported by those opposite up until a change in leadership. And let's see what happened. In 6 years of Labor, Australia's wind capacity tripled and solar went through the roof, or certainly on the roof and through the roof. We established the Australian Renewable Energy Agency and Clean Energy Finance Corporation, which are already hard at work developing, commercialising and investing in new renewable energy technology. We also established the world's most comprehensive network of national parks in the ocean. The Great Barrier Reef is a magnificent asset that people from all around the world come to enjoy, and great for tourism in Queensland. So, these budget papers reveal some horrible choices from those opposite, some horrible challenges for the future, but they are attempting to fundamentally change the nature of Australian society, which is why I've called it such the worst, the most un-Australian budget delivered in our history. As has been acknowledged by the Prime Minister today and yesterday, Australia's economy is fundamentally strong, and that this is the legacy that Labor has left behind. There are challenges on the horizon, of course there are, but let's look at what the reality is of today. We've got low inflation, low interest rates, net debt peaking at just 1/7 of the level of the major comparable advanced economies. We've got a AAA credit rating with a stable outlook from all three international ratings agencies, one of only 8 countries in the world to have that rating. Our superannuation savings are larger than the size of our whole economy. And since Kevin Rudd came to office in 2007, 1 million jobs had been created under Labor and then under the Abbott government, although it's looking a bit crooked at the moment. That's the real budget environment that we need to look at, the budget delivered a fortnight ago. Now, there were challenges if we'd continued on course, but obviously the global financial crisis decisions made by Labor, supported by those opposite, were different. Those decisions were made in the context of the global financial crisis, and since then there'd been a recalibration and adjustments made. I saw the budget a fortnight ago as sort of being like an approach to someone who, like myself, that maybe likes to eat hot chips. Obviously, if I spent every day of my life eating buckets and buckets of hot chips, that would create a problem. But what do you do when as someone that is campaigning to make sure people are aware of diabetes? Well, what do? I talk to them about the decisions that they're making, try and change their behaviour. The budget we saw the other night was a drastic response to some challenges that were on the horizon. It was almost like that scene from Pulp Fiction where they drive the adrenaline into the chest of Mia Wallace, played by Uma Thurman. It was a drastic overreaction to a challenge that was coming. It was almost like you solved someone's the problem of someone eating too many buckets of hot chips by cutting off their hands or their arms or something. The reality is we have challenges, but we have the time and the strategies to solve those challenges and to avoid the big problems. And sadly, the current government has no consistency in its approach. We've seen that with their announcement that they're going to cut thousands and thousands of jobs throughout Australia, at the same time as they announced cutting funding to employment services that would actually help those people that are made redundant to find new work. The reality is this budget from a fortnight ago saw the coalition turn their back on public schools and disadvantaged students in schools. The Education Minister, the member for Sturt, said that Australia does not have an equity problem in education, but the reality is we looked at the Gonski report. If he'd read the Gonski report, even though I suspect since he was able to put out a press release before it had even been put out, had been released, he didn't read it in great detail. Education is what we should be investing in. The economy of the future, by investing in broadband, is what Australia should be focused on. Instead, we've seen a budget that has provided a savage attack on Australian families, on our pensioners, on our young people, and heaven forbid on anyone that misses out on employment. It's also attacking our environment, our education system and our health system, and all of those strong social fabric items that Labor invested so much in over the years, including things like Medicare. I believe in a strong and prosperous Australia, and am proud to be a part of the Labor Party that will fight this Abbott-Hockey budget and the broken promises that are contained in there. The legislation before the chamber is a betrayal of Australia as far as I'm concerned and should be condemned as such.